Hi, Helena. Thanks for making time for being on the Ideas Lab podcast.
Hello, my pleasure. Really happy to be here.
And you have someone with you at the moment. This is the first podcast I've ever done quite like this. Tell me who's with you
I
right now.
do. I've got a 6-week-old baby Arthur strapped to my
Wow.
chest. He's snoozing
Oh.
away, so hopefully he will stay asleep. Who knows?
Oh,
He's very
wow.
cute.
Okay. That's lovely. And you've got a son, haven't you?
Yeah, Leo. So Leo's 19 months old, and he's at nursery at the moment because this wouldn't be so easy if he was around.
Right. Yeah. I can
A lot
imagine.
more chaotic.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated by your entrepreneurial journey and what you've created at TrueStart Coffee. Well, you didn't start in the coffee world. And I like the product placement. Show us the product, actually. But for people listening to the audio, they should watch the video on this. TrueStart. So this is the cold brew coffee, isn't it?
This is the chili chocolate cold brew.
Oh, I
I'm a
quite like
bit
the sound
addicted
of
to it,
that.
to be honest.
Just,
I'm
just.
obviously feeding Arthur and shouldn't be drinking too much coffee,
Oh,
so it's
really?
hard.
Yeah. But I'm quite into good coffee. I'm not a massive snob about it. I'm quite into good coffee, and I live in Shoreditch, which is famed for its good coffee. But I didn't realize. So cold brew, though, this is the one thing I'm ignorant about. Cold brew coffee is the drink you're drinking right now.
Yeah,
It is served cold, is it? I didn't know if it just brewed
yeah,
cold.
it is.
Okay, right.
And you'll be happy to hear we're kind of like an antidote to all the hipster nonsense.
Oh,
I'm
good.
not a coffee snob myself.
Mm.
I love great coffee, but we're all about like vibrant, healthy, clean coffee. So don't worry, it's not about the sort of hipster rubbish. So yeah, it's cold brew. It's made cold and served cold. So do you know what? My cats have just started kicking off. I didn't even think that this might be an issue.
Did not think your cats would be more problematic than the baby. No.
No.
Wow.
So yeah, it's made cold, it's served cold, it's really refreshing.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, and that's, I
That's kind of
know,
how it's different to us.
and that's really hot. Not that in that hot, but it's really hot right now in Shoreditch and around the world. So now you're all about coffee. But when you begun and you were looking for, did you set out going, okay, let's start a business, and you're looking for ideas? Because you started somewhere completely different. And my
We
assistant
did.
Ben told me about your first business. What were you doing, and when did you decide? Okay, we want to start a business. We don't want to have a job.
So funnily enough, we weren't thinking about a business and then coming up with ideas, but we have always been like quite entrepreneurial, like generally, like how we think, and always known we probably would start a business together. But yeah, before TrueStart, our first foray into our own business, I say our because I'm talking about me and my husband,
Yeah.
Simon, was luxury cat furniture, believe it or not. So, and that it came out of like our own like necessity, I suppose. So we got a cat, one of the ones kicking off behind me, and he's a Bengal cat. So they're like mental. They need loads of stuff to play on, and we were just. We had chosen him. We were going to go and collect him in a couple of months, and we were looking at cat furniture, and all the stuff I could find was just really ugly.
Oh
And
yeah.
Simon basically thought, do you know what I reckon? Simon's got an engineer's background. So he was like, I reckon I can make a cat tree out of a branch. And randomly we went camping to Loch Lomond near Glasgow, Scotland. And we literally were walking in the wood around there. Someone had put a bonfire together but hadn't set fire to it. And the next thing I knew, we had like pinched a piece of wood, like a full-on branch from there. We went to like some hardware store in a town, bought like sandpaper and stuff, and literally put together this cat tree there and took it back home because we had driven there in parts, put it together. And it was pretty beautiful, even the first one. And people that came round were like, what's that? That's amazing. Where can I buy one? And it just started from there. And it was a side business as well as our full-time jobs. And it actually ended up doing quite well. It got into Vanity Fair and stuff. We ended up shipping those trees all over the world. Yeah.
Because I know what you mean. I've seen those sort of scratching posts and stuff. I mean, my images of these sort of hideous, like tall circular things, like a pole, but it's been
Yeah.
wrapped with the dodgiest carpet from the 70s,
Yeah.
beige
Exactly.
carpet, and then stapled on. And that's my image of one of those things. But so did
Yeah.
this did actually get a lot of publicity, and it started to sell, but you didn't persist with that?
No, I mean, we love our cats, don't get me wrong, but we didn't. belong in the cat world. We weren't, and like one of my biggest things is with your own business, as you'll know, you have to care so much to your bones about it. Otherwise, you don't get through the tough days. And it was a bit of fun, honestly, and it taught us a lot. And we really enjoyed, like, I think all the learning and the brand building that came along with it. But the cat world just wasn't for us, to be honest. It just wasn't.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And you have to, you have to be excited by the prospect of going to the trade show or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
or, going
Yeah,
to the
well, that's
exhibition.
exactly it. And I think it was actually at a cat trade show where we were like, honestly, do this. And we loved it up until that point of, okay, it's a hobby, but we don't love it more than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so what were you doing at the time you were doing this? So that was your side hustle, you said. What were your jobs at the time?
So Simon was a project manager for like a signage company. So the signs in like the airports, when you go and you're like, where's my check-in desk? That was him. And I was in software sales. So quite different, really.
Yeah. Have you both quit now, or are you still doing it?
Yeah, we quit when we started TrueStart, actually. Well, I was still working for a period, but Simon quit day one.
So how did you have the idea for a different kind of coffee?
So it was, Cougar Tree, actually, that was the cat business, did exist when we had the idea for TrueStart. It was a few years ago now. Simon and I were obviously alongside our full-time jobs, and this is pre-kids. We were training for a triathlon, like an Ironman triathlon. So it was, for me especially, because I hadn't done it before, it was a massive challenge. And the upshot of it is that we were drinking absolutely loads of coffee. Like, we got in the habit of having one before the gym or before training, but I was on the road a lot, like as part of my job, I was driving loads. And honestly, I was just early starts, late nights, and I was living off coffee. And I started to kind of notice, and so did Simon, that I would feel kind of really different after every coffee. Like, sometimes it wouldn't even wake me up. Other times I'd feel quite anxious and jittery, and I just honestly never knew how I was going to feel. And I kind of started to look into it. We were coming at this from a sporty place of mind, and we were thinking about nutrition and stuff. So I was doing some reading, and I found out that the caffeine level in coffee varies an insane amount. So you could be drinking 20 milligrams in one cup and honestly 300 in another, which is ridiculous. Like, it's no wonder it makes you feel so different. And I was mind blown. Like, I'm quite sensitive to caffeine, so it affects me a lot. And we were like, surely we're not the only people in the world who think a clean, like, really delicious, obviously, but a clean coffee with like a predictable caffeine boost, so you feel awesome every time, but with no crash, no jitters. Surely we're not the only people in the world who think that would be an epic idea. And it turns out it had never been done before. There was a reason. It's not that easy to do. Caffeine and coffee's a natural product, and there's a lot of things that affect the caffeine level. But long story short, we developed the sourcing process, really selective sourcing process, and technology to regulate the caffeine level in coffee. And fast forward a year from having the idea, we launched into the sports world. So now you see TrueStart, and it's a colourful lifestyle brand. But initially, we were really focused on sport because it just made sense to where we were. And we were all about making people feel awesome, like, from day one. And we still are, even though now we're about more than just sport. Day one, I'll never forget, like, with Simon and I in a field with about 20 people that were running a really small 10K race. And we're like handing out shots of TrueStart, being like, have an awesome race. And people would come back and be like, oh, I got a PB. And they would attribute it to the coffee. And we just made them feel good. You could see that in their eyes. And we built a brand by doing that, by going out and winning people over, telling them all about caffeine and coffee and helping them understand it in relation to training. And people loved it. And we quite quickly became the coffee for sport. And this was our instant coffee, so our premium instant coffee. We didn't have cold coffee at that point, nothing. Even though I always said we're building the Red Bull of coffee, and it's funny now we have cans of drink. So that's how we first came up with the idea. But then a couple of years ago, we stopped drinking alcohol completely. So we went from being like the heaviest drinkers in our group of friends to going completely teetotal overnight, because we're quite all or nothing people. So I realize I'm going on a bit. I just want to tell you the
No,
sort of how the brand,
it's good. Yeah.
why the brand sort of changed. So we basically, it didn't matter if it was a good day or a bad day. We were honestly drinking too much. And we were like, all or nothing people, let's go nothing. And we stopped drinking. Haven't looked back, actually. Don't miss it at all, which is weird. But very quickly, we got really bored of like, there's only so much ginger beer you could drink in the pub. And we were at one of our favorite music festivals that summer near Berlin. Red Bull were one of the main sponsors, and we just wanted TrueStart to be there. And we were like, the only thing you could find to drink was beer and Red Bull and water, and it was rubbish. And we were making cold TrueStarts, like getting our instant coffee and water in a bottle. And we went to a friend's wedding in the US around that time. Cold brew is everywhere over there. And it just got us thinking. And we were like, well, our idea for clean, vibrant, healthy coffee that makes you feel amazing, it's perfect for a drink as well. And that was when we decided to develop a range of cold brew coffees. And we also, at that time, decided to bring TrueStart out of, we looked like a very sporty brand at that time. So quite serious and stuff. And Simon and I are not like that as people. We wanted a brand that like reflects who we are. So more colourful and more fun. So we launched the cold brew and the rebrand at the same time about 18 months ago when our first son was born.
Wow.
So that's a long answer to your question.
No, but that's great. I love hearing the arc of that. And now it's stopped by Ocado, and who else were you talking about?
Whole Foods. So we're in all kinds of different places. We're in health fitness centres and gyms. So David Lloyd nationally, for example. We're in bars like Revolution de Cuba and Harvey Nichols, and because actually TrueStart makes a pretty awesome mixer. Just as like a sort of secondary thing. And then obviously we're in retailers and lots of sort of specialist retailers as well, like farm shops and things. And then lots of offices as well. You'll find our coffee.
And so what you're saying is, when you describe it as a clean coffee, what does that mean? Because I understand that you're standardizing the caffeine, which is a new thing. Is there some, what does clean mean? Does that mean something else?
Well, with the cold brew, it's actually the only flavored cold brew in the world that doesn't have any sugar, any calories, or any. Oh, Arthur's snoring. I don't know if you can hear that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any sweeteners either, so no artificial rubbish. So it genuinely is like a really guilt-free, clean drink that makes you feel awesome. And with our hot coffee as well, our beans are just really carefully sourced. So often with instant coffee, for example, it's the rubbish beans that get used, and that's why instant gets a bad rep. But we use barista grade instant beans for our instant coffee. So the whole range is just like really high quality coffee, low mycotoxin, so low mold. And the drinks have no sugar or any rubbish in. And
so I guess, and you know, some of those things are probably contributing to that. Some of how you feel after you've drunk a normal coffee, you know, the mycotoxins or whatever else. Yeah.
Exactly. And like, if you think about sort of on the go, cold coffee options that have loads of milk and sugar, they're more like a sweet treat, like a coffee milkshake, and they don't make you feel clean and good. Like you wouldn't have one of those and go to the gym, for example. So yeah, we're kind of like doing something a little bit different to those.
And I think, I also think if you can, I notice myself because I'm quite sensitive to sugar and to caffeine. If I have something that's sweet and got caffeine in it, it makes me more likely to go hypoglycemic. Now, for other people, they may have more stable blood sugar levels than that. But if the combination, if you kind of take something sweet and then hit yourself with caffeine, it gives you a massive sugar spike, which is probably very bad for your health. Yeah. And then you get a crash. So even if you don't go hypo, like I'm prone to do, you'll feel rough and you might feel, you know, down and so on.
And more people than you think. So many people have that sensitivity.
And so we were talking earlier and you were saying, you know, entrepreneurship as being kind of over glamorized. Have there been tough moments for you along this journey? Because it sounds great, but you've now got a successful brand that represents who you are. And that's recognized and loved and so on and stocked by all sorts of people. But there's presumably been some setbacks, and you must be pretty resilient to get over those.
Oh God, like I wouldn't even know where to start with talking about setbacks because it's relentless.
Yeah.
And I don't see it stopping anytime soon either. Like I've got friends, I would definitely call them friends just in the industry who are further along or not as
Yeah.
far along as TrueStart. And I've come to the conclusion it doesn't matter how successful your business is, how long you've been around, how much experience you have, you still have tons of setbacks. And even when we decided to go from, we've built a solid business in the sports world, and we made this really big decision to almost put it in the bin and start again. Like we even discontinued the products we were doing at the time, which we're about to reintroduce. But that's another story. And that decision alone to do that was really, really big and stressful. We worried about like upsetting and annoying our super loyal customers, and there's been so many things that have been tough, and
I think
that was like
that
questioning yourself.
I think that's a really important one because, sometimes people look at Mark Zuckerberg and think, oh, he had this great idea for a social network, but it isn't that. He actually, I mean, I know he's more controversial now because he's done some things that have been pretty dodgy by anyone's standard, but throughout the history of Facebook, he's been willing to do things which were so unpopular with his user base at the time. And now, like apparently when they introduced the newsfeed and Facebook, everyone went, this is rubbish, I'm quitting Facebook. Now you just go
I remember
like,
when that happened, and I was
did
like,
really? But it
yeah,
was just like, but now that is Facebook. You can't imagine it without. And almost all the changes they've done, everyone moaned about video autoplaying. Now you can't imagine it without video autoplaying.
yeah,
And everything. So he's willing to do things that jeopardize the entire business, because if you don't, somebody else does it, and then they take your entire market off you. So if you persisted with the sports market, which wasn't really your passion, you probably you would have, you might have seen that kind of drop off, and you wouldn't be where
and we
you are
might have
now.
seen somebody launch that vibrant, fun brand that the coffee world to me is the gap, and that is the gap we feel. The coffee world is at the one end, lots of big dinosaur brands like Starbucks and stuff who are just pretty boring, to be honest. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got lots and lots of smaller, more hipster brands that are quite similar to each other. And honestly, the whole coffee industry, whilst it's massive, is like quite samey and quite boring. And we're all about like breaking through all that with just fun and vibrancy. And if I'd watched someone else do that while we were stuck in what we had managed to make quite a serious world of only sport, but with a brand that felt quite serious, when we're honestly not at all as people, I would have been really, I'd have been gutted. And like you said about being passionate, like if you're not in love with what you're doing every day, then you're not going to get through those low days. And if we hadn't listened to our gut, then it wouldn't exist anymore. That is for sure. We came to the conclusion that we didn't want TrueStart to exist unless it was on the path to becoming actually what we want it to become. And how we sort of overcame other people being upset was by being really like open. So the whole time TrueStart's existed, we've been quite big on customer communication, like Facebook Lives and just talking to our customers, getting to know them. I've got loads of them are like friends of mine now. They early doors would add me on Facebook, and I've got like all these TrueStart customers that I wouldn't know these people if it wasn't for TrueStart, that are genuinely friends and have so much to do with the business. And we just communicated with them. We're like, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. It's for the right reasons. And the right reasons being actually what is in our hearts, as opposed to like making a decision for profit only or something like that. That's when people get upset, I think. But as soon as people realized that we were doing what we really truly wanted to do, and we believed that TrueStart was going to be better off and they were going to be better off for it, then people were really supportive. Like they really those customers are, from day one till now, have been so supportive through all the ups and downs. And your overall I always say like your vibe attracts your tribe, and it really does.
That's really important, isn't it? And not to, it's the opposite end of that spectrum from the kind of the ruthless marketers who, use every trick in the book to get you to buy, don't really worry about the quality of the product, and then will dump their customers at a moment's notice if they think somebody else is going to make them more money. So
Yeah, exactly.
and unfortunately, a lot of those people are actually the gurus of marketing. So if you're not
Yeah.
careful, you think that's the way it should be done, and that's the way business should be done. Where in actual fact, being a good person actually goes a long way, and having
Yeah,
maintaining a relationship.
it does. But sadly, or probably, unfortunately, is the wrong word. But one of the things I've realized is that one of the reasons that resilience is so important is because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, Simon and I included, who got into this because we want to prove, right, that you can be and build a global, awesome brand that makes people feel amazing without compromising on people and the planet. We want to prove that you can. And actually, it's really hard.
Yeah, right.
Because you're up against people who definitely, you're up against the big boys. So you're up against all these huge corporations who genuinely don't care, don't like, they're more than prepared to compromise on people and the planet. They're established, they've got loads and loads of cash. And actually, the more into that you get, the more you realize what you really are up against, and how, no matter how nice it sounds on paper, how much people love the idea of, very basic examples are, in fact, I'll use a non-TrueStart example. If you buy a t-shirt from Primark, you know what you're supporting behind the scenes. And you know that it's not the most ethical, but because it's a couple of quid, you kind of gone, oh, I'll just pretend that, I
Yeah,
haven't done that, or whatever. And people love the idea of super ethical clothing, but aren't prepared to pay for it. And that applies to everything, including coffee. So actually, it's really, really, you're really up against it as an entrepreneur trying to genuinely do things the right way and make a difference. And when you're refusing to compromise on those things, it definitely means that it is a struggle. And I would never want people to think it was easy,
yeah.
but it's worth it because you feel good about yourself, even though sometimes you're like, oh my God, this is never going to work because I can't compete with Nescafe on price or whatever it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, what does it mean for you in terms of, you describe it on your website, the ethics and the giving back? What kind of things is TrueStart involved in?
So we're currently really proudly working towards becoming B Corp certified. I don't know if you're familiar with B
I've
Corporation.
heard the term, but I don't know what it means.
So B Corp is, I say it's like the gold standard for people that are using business for good. So it's really hard to achieve. And with B Corp, you put additional legal terms into your shareholders agreement to say that you're going to report on a triple bottom line. So all businesses report on profit, bottom line, but with B Corps, you report on profit, people and planet, and you do an annual impact report. All of your supply chain is like really well rigorously assessed all of the time by you. It's like quite a big thing to undertake as a business, but it's the only thing we think actually encompasses, like, looks at ethical trading as it should be looked at, which is from every angle. I think there's a lot of businesses out there, particularly big boys, that are guilty of greenwashing. So, doing something just for PR rather than really changing things behind the scenes. And I think the consumer's going to become, consumers are already pretty savvy to bullshit. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
pretty savvy to just rubbish that people churn out if it's kind of just for PR. But this certification is almost going to do that for them. It's going to put a stamp on products and businesses that are like truly ethical through and through. So it's really hard to achieve. And my husband's actually planning on video documenting the journey this year. And it's probably going to take us about a year to get there, even though we score quite highly already.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's great. And does that, so that for you, that involves things like how much you pay for the coffee, or for, it involves sourcing, doesn't it? What do you do around sourcing?
it actually involves, so B Corp involves all sorts. So if we're bringing on a new supplier, making sure they're not using slave labor, in their factory, that kind of thing, and make our own people are all paid, including people like baristas, for example, are paid the real living wage. That just all that kind of thing. But from a sourcing perspective, our cold brew is Rainforest Alliance certified. The coffee comes from where I used to live in Colombia, our like classic blend. And we're about to launch a couple more products as well that are organic, fair trade, and Rainforest Alliance certified. So yeah, we do. Our sourcing is like really, really core to the cleanness of the coffee. So it's really important to TrueStart. But yeah, this good example of the Primark thing that I was talking about. People may want fair trade or organic, but are not necessarily prepared to pay for it. But there is a higher cost associated because the people that grow the coffee are not, slave labor. And that stuff is real. I think we're just quite disassociated from it because we're lucky enough to live in like the UK.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I've got a friend who runs a cleaning company, and all their cleaners get paid not the minimum wage, but the living wage, as you say.
Real living wage, yeah.
And it does add a cost to things, but it means that everybody's treated well. It means actually also they get really good people, and they can afford to reject people, and so on. So you can be more fussy about who you take on and all those things. So that's great. And
it should mean a better service for the customer, right?
Yes, yeah. So what's next for TrueStart? Any projects coming up that you can talk about?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely pumped about so we've got a new product range launching over the next couple of months, which we've only just started talking about to suppliers and things, to customers, sorry. It's not properly out there yet, but I can tell you. So when we launched the cold coffees, we discontinued our original product, the premium barista grade instant coffee. And we did that because we wrongly believed that actually outside of sport, people probably wouldn't want instant coffee no matter how good it was. So we were focused purely on the cans. And then we have our beans that mostly we sell into offices and things. Anyway, fast forward over a year since we discontinued most of the hot coffee range. Every single day still, we are getting so many requests through the website. Like, where's this coffee gone? Can you do instant coffee? All these kinds of things. And it's been ridiculous. So we had to listen to it. And we always have really listened to our customers. So we're about to launch our barista grade instant and 3 new roasts of the fresh coffee, beans in big bags, not bin bags, beans in small bags, and a full range of hot coffee for retail, because we're all about having that guilt-free natural energy kick wherever and whenever you need it. And that is hot sometimes as well as cold. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. And if anyone listening to this thinks I need to get hold of some of this stuff, what's the easiest way to get it at the moment?
Well, TrueStartCoffee.com will always have the whole range available.
But you can order directly off the site?
You can, yeah. So our focus isn't e-commerce as like a strategy. Our focus is retail, but it is available to buy on the website for people who can't get to a retailer. Ocado, if you shop on Ocado, please go and pick some up there. Whole Foods, if you're in London, is a great place. If you're in a Revolution de Cuba bar, you can get yourself a TrueStart, or before the gym, go into David Lloyd, you can get yourself a TrueStart.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thanks, Helena. That was really interesting, and look forward to seeing where you go next with it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.